I'm Frank Garza, and welcome to Here and Abroad, a podcast that follows the U.S. men's national team and their player pool across Europe, MLS, or wherever else they play their club's football. On today's show, we are going to discuss the recently completed September friendlies for the USMNT. They lost 2-1 to Canada and drew 1-1 against New Zealand. The good news is that Mauricio Pochettino has finally been officially announced as the next USMNT head coach, so we'll also spend some time discussing what we're looking forward to with him taking charge. To help me today, I've invited Chuck Booth back to the show. Chuck is a soccer writer at CBS Sports. Chuck, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Always good to have you. I think the last time we spoke was during the Copa America. We did a few shows. Not much good news since then, but I guess I just want to start with what were your biggest takeaways or impressions from the September window?
Yeah, we haven't had a lot of fun lately, um, but yeah, this was always going to be a weird window because like now that it's ended, like interim managers have coached the same amount of matches, which is 14 for the USMNT as Greg Berhalter has since the 2022 World Cup ended, and you can tell just by that getting instructions through to these players when they know that it's not a permanent solution is just easier said than done. And this window was particularly weird with knowing that Pochettino was coming, but not knowing when, and just that whole protracted situation where you can't even prepare for the future because he's not in the United States to even say what he wants to see. And it kind of just showed in the matches. I know Mikey Varas like kind of said after the first match, so maybe he's tried to get the players to do too much, but also they struggled to actually just get up for a game against Canada when Jesse Marsch said that he was going to beat them 2-1. Like you shouldn't need much more motivation than that to play a game of soccer for the national team. And like even though a lot of the regulars for the national team weren't there, it was still just disappointing all around.
Yeah, the Canada game especially, that was one of the most, if not the most pitiful performance I think I've seen from this U.S. men's national team, in quite some time. Maybe take away the Panama game, but even then it was just kind of a boneheaded red card. This match against Canada, like they were dominated.
Oh yeah.
Like they made Canada look like the best pressing team in the entire world, which I'm not saying Canada's not a solid team. They are, but they're not as good as we made them look. Like I've never seen the US get dominated like that, even for a half.
Well, Colombia.
Colombia, yeah, it was yeah, that's true.
But that's the
I don't know. I
first
felt
game
worse.
that came. Well, it's Colombia is the first game that came to mind. And even when you're
Yeah.
comparing Colombia and Canada, they're two very different national teams. And like even who was making the mistakes against Canada, like Canada's second goal was a direct giveaway from Tim Ream. Um, I want to give Johnny Cardoso like a little bit of slack, but still not a ton because he hasn't played a lot of minutes for Real Betis for some reason or another this season. I don't particularly know why after breaking into the midfield last year, he's getting fewer minutes this year. But it is tough to come into that scenario rusty, having like 2 days of training with these players, and then needing to be in the correct position at all times.
Yeah. Yeah, he took a lot of flack, I think, from folks for his performance, and we will get into who are some of the players that we thought had a good window and a bad window. But I think we can pretty much all agree that it wasn't a good window. Maybe just to sum it up, against New Zealand, thought they played a lot better. But it was lack of finishing, which we see a lot, and then it was just kind of a boneheaded play late in the match that gave up the equalizer to New Zealand. And I don't know. It looks like a losing atmosphere right now, around this team. They really do need a change. and so I'm excited to see Pochettino come in. Do you think do you see more of like a losing mentality or losing atmosphere around this club more so in in this window than others?
Oh, definitely. And it's like a lot of the leaders weren't there, but like you would expect these players to be like, oh, we have an opportunity to show the new coach why we should be in the national team setup. And like as of right now, like I kind of feel the need to ding the entire ceiling of the U.S. men's national team after this window, because if you're gonna go into a window without like Tim Weah, Anthony Robinson, Weston McKennie, and perform like this, how are you gonna survive through longer knockout competitions where you need to rotate?
Yeah. 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 A lot of players. Yeah, I kind of thought the same thing. I thought we would see a lot of intensity from this group because they knew Pochettino would be watching, or at the very least, he's definitely going to be watching film. Of these two games since they're the most recent. So I would have thought there would be more intensity. Didn't think we saw that from a lot of players, but I do think some of them we did. Some of them I did think took advantage of this opportunity, and that's kind of what I'm curious to hear from you. Is when you look at the players who maybe did have a good window, did put in a good performance or a more positive performance, who's a player that stood out to you?
I feel like most people probably have the same player at the top of that list, and that's Aiden Morris.
Absolutely.
There, it doesn't feel like there's any way in October that he can't be in that squad, assuming that he's healthy and still starting games for Middlesbrough. Like even after last night's game against New Zealand, um, Veras didn't have much to say about Morris except he bossed the midfield, and that's really all you needed to say. Like every time the ball came to him, he was where he needed to be and trying to put the ball where it needed to go. And even on Pulisic's goal, like his crossfield ball to like free, I believe that was Fossey that then got it to Balogun on that, was just an excellent show of his vision. And Morris has been someone every step along the way of his career, from needing to start MLS Cup because of Darlington Nagbe getting COVID, to then becoming an actual starter for the Columbus Crew, now going into midfield under Michael Carrick at Middlesbrough and shining in the championship. Like every time he's been challenged, he's stepped up and delivered. And this window, he did it again despite total chaos around him.
Yeah, he to me was the most impressive player. Period. In this entire camp, and his energy, his fight from the moment he came on as a sub against Canada, it just looked different. And you're right, he was just so clean in his game yesterday, taking care of the ball. You could see him very consciously distributing it to the right places. He was just always around. He was winning balls back, and I'm just impressed with this guy has like had a kind of a meteoric rise the last couple months. I know he's been thought of very highly in MLS for the Columbus Crew, but he had a few opportunities with the U.S. men's national team before, in like the Gold Cup and I think the January window this year, where I didn't think he really did too much to stand out. But something about that move to Middlesbrough, kind of something seems to have clicked with him, where he just reached a whole new level, because now he looks like a different player to me. And I don't know how do you put somebody else back there, to play that holding midfielder or number six role. I mean, I think I don't know how you put somebody else back there, when you're talking about people like Johnny Cardoso, or possibly, I know Musa plays back there, sometimes Luca De La Torre. I know we all want Tyler Adams to come back, and that's a whole other story, but
Yeah.
that's going to be a while. I think Aiden Morris almost kind of won the job, with his performance.
I mean, he's definitely on the right track there, and it's actually funny that after kind of such a bad window, most of the players that actually looked good were midfielders.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because even moving off of that a little bit, like while he didn't play a ton and also kind of couldn't play a ton due to the fact that he just came back from injury with Celta Vigo, this is probably one of the better windows that we've seen from Luca de la Torre, even like taking out of the equation the fact that he scored his first international goal on just that chaotic play against Canada. Because his passing and positioning was also extremely crisp. And you could see the difference against New Zealand the second that Yunus Musa came out and he came into the midfield.
Yeah. He's somebody that's really got to be excited about new head coach coming in, because it seemed pretty clear where Berhalter had Luca de la Torre kind of rated. It was near the, I don't know. They typically bring in six midfielders, and it seemed to be like pretty near the bottom, of those six. He'd come into camp, usually not play a lot, didn't seem to be getting much of a chance. He's got to be thrilled that he's going to have kind of a fresh start, to getting more playing time and possibly earning a starting position. Let me mention one other guy that really impressed me against New Zealand, and that was Marlon Fossey. So I gotta be honest, I'd never watched the guy play before. I'm familiar with him, playing in Belgium. I talked to somebody who follows the Belgian Pro League, and they had kind of filled me in on what type of player he is. But that was my first time really getting a good look at him, and I thought he looked pretty good out there. I thought he brought a good level of energy. He was a lot more dynamic than what we've seen from like a Joe Scally, for example. He looked more dangerous in the attacking end. He looked more creative. He was calm on the ball when he'd get into the final third, kind of waiting for the right pass versus just launching across, into the box. And he just has the way his style is, it just looks like easy for him out there. He's just kind of gliding around the field, makes everything look easy. So I was really impressed with him. What did you think of Fossey?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was pretty impressive. It's tough to like get opinions just specifically on the New Zealand game, just because of the fact that I would like to see him against tougher opposition that challenges him defensively, and New Zealand didn't really do that. But at least when you get down to what historically the USMNT has wanted right backs to do, and also what a wingback does under Mauricio Pochettino, there's a lot to like here, because he took every chance possible to get forward, always looking for those overlapping runs. And even though he was playing without a traditional winger in front of him, since Ricardo Pepi was the person out there, still able to create so many chances in so much space. And there's a lot to like about the potential of what would happen when it's him and Tim Weah out there on, and especially just with the fact that Weah is someone who can also help fill in on defense as well. So it is going to be interesting, especially since while yes, we want Sergiño Dest to come back and be the player who was growing into his role for the national team, just those types of ACL injuries, that's not always the case that happens. So we do need to be prepared for what if Sergiño Dest doesn't get back to his best.
Yeah. And it's going to be a while, even if he does get back to his best. I mean, I think if I remember correctly, I heard him reference maybe January, something somewhere around there, where he's hoping to be back with PSV, but then it's still going to take a couple months for him to get playing time before we could even think about bringing him back in for the U.S. men's national team. So we have a lot of matches ahead of us before he even could potentially come back. What about a player you thought had a poor window or didn't meet expectations or didn't seize the opportunity? Who comes to mind there?
Oh man,
Hard to choose.
Yeah, no, because this is definitely where it gets into a pretty lengthy discussion just about the team. I think it's better to start with players that we were excited about for getting an opportunity that didn't take it, and that's Haji Wright. And he's kind of a weird guy because like I feel like he's almost locked into what his role is with this national team because he has been good at changing the pace off the bench, but like there hasn't been a point in which he's started a game for the national team and it's just been like, okay, this is great. Like I like what I'm getting from him out of the gate. And it's fine if like that is what his ceiling is, but just with what he's been doing for Coventry, you just expected more. Like when you saw him starting on the wing instead of Christian Pulisic, with Pulisic finally getting some rest, it's like, okay, like this is your time to go out there and make things happen. And he just didn't.
Yeah. Yeah, he didn't really do a whole lot of things wrong, but you weren't left with that many glimpses of something really great. Whereas maybe somebody, I'll throw in like a Ricardo Pepi, for example, didn't get a goal. I think he's probably going to be pretty disappointed with that too. But he did show some. He was dangerous. There was a couple times in front of goal where the goalkeeper made like a good stop on some of his shots, and you just didn't see that with Haji. I didn't really see that many like dangerous moments. When I thought about this, I'm kind of like you. At first, I thought, okay, really bad window is going to be easy to pick out a lot of like bad individual performances. But in honesty, there weren't a whole lot of players that came to mind. It just seemed like this was a very overall like bad window for like the entire team. It was like a bad like team effort. But the guy I thought of was kind of similar to you, someone who didn't take advantage of the opportunity presented to him, and that was Malik Tillman. So similar, just like you kind of said with Haji right there. I mean, got the start against Canada. Playing in that central midfield role. And he had some moments. I don't want to say he looked bad out there, but again, if he wants to break into the starting 11, he's going to have to do something with one of these starts. He's been given more starts, in the last 6 months or so, more opportunities, and I think he's yet to really come out there and have an amazing performance that makes you say, yeah, he could be a starting midfield, for this U.S. men's national team.
Yeah, his role is so interesting to me because like even against Canada, you saw essentially like the best singular run by a United States midfielder since Gio Reyna. But then at the end of it, can't put the ball where it needs to go to turn it into an actual goal. And it's like some of that you just need consistency and like familiarity with these players, but also like he's been around long enough that he should have that. And like players like Malik Tillman are players that this team needs desperately because anyone who can actually create a chance on their own without someone playing them into a perfect position is what this team needs to go to the next level. And like Brendan Aronson can do it occasionally, but like he's just not really that kind of guy. Like he's more of a facilitator than he is necessarily a true creator. Um, we know Reyna can do it, but we don't know how much of Reyna we're going to see, or even how much Dortmund is going to play him. And like Tillman last season for PSV was involved in more than 20 goals in all competitions. And also being at PSV, playing with plenty of members of this national team. But it still just hasn't clicked when it comes to that next level. And players like him are where I'm very interested to see how they perform under Pochettino as opposed to how they've performed under previous coaching regimes, because some of that is just tactics. And once you're getting tactics from one of the top coaches in the world, there really aren't any excuses left for why these players aren't fulfilling their full potential.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he is a player we need so bad because he has that creativity And I'm hoping you're right that Pochettino can get that next level, out of him. So that's where I want to go next is Pochettino. We've all been on pins and needles for, geez, feels like about a month now. Heard some reports yesterday that it was going to come out. I was checking personally. I was checking all day. Every break I got in my workday, I was looking to see if it came out, and then they finally announced it on the pregame broadcast before the match. So it's now official. The Pochettino era has begun. I guess it will officially begin on October 12th when they play their next match against Panama. That'll be I'm excited. It's about 1 mile from my house here in Austin, Texas at Q2 Stadium. So that's when we'll see Pochettino first in action. And then on October 15th, they play in Guadalajara against Mexico. So that's going to be Pochettino's first 2 matches. I want to just get from you, what are you looking forward to in the Pochettino era? Maybe let's start like short term between like now and those next 2 matches. Like, what are you excited to see?
Yeah, I mean, short term, it is tough. I did like a lot of the things that Matt Crocker said in his at least like setup for Pochettino, because like he's coming to the United States to be here for his official unveiling tomorrow, now on Friday. And then that starts like basically a 6-week ramp up period of teaching Pochettino everything there is to know about the U.S. national team and what he needs to be successful right out of the gate in October. And considering that like both he and Matt Crocker have worked together in the past, and he and Emma Hayes have worked together in the past, like it doesn't get much better for hopefully him being able to hit the ground running. And then from there, it really is just a shakeup because as soon as Pochettino goes into any role, he very quickly figures out who his guys are versus who they aren't. And you see quite quickly who may not have a future with this national team anymore. And it's hard ahead of him coming in to necessarily like predict who any of those players will be outside of the fact that like I don't see Pochettino calling in Tim Ream. Like he is going to be only focused on who can help me in 2026, and just there's just no way that you can say with this group of center backs that Tim Ream is going to be one of your top 3 or 4 center backs in 2026. I am going to be very interested to see what he does with the players who aren't playing, because that was another thing that came up in the interview, even on the fact that like Crocker's excited for Pochettino to kind of have those discussions with players about not only like what they need to do to play, but also where they may need to go for that next step in their careers. And that's going to be just something that's going to fascinating on how that could just change the trajectory of the entire U.S. men's national team, because like this is someone who has like helped youth every step along the way, and especially like when he was at Espanyol, Southampton, Tottenham, like half of his job was preparing players for that next step in their career to be elsewhere as opposed to the club that he's currently at. And so it's just like there aren't many better people in the world that you can get advice from on what you need to do to make it at the top level and extend your career at the top level than Pochettino.
Yeah, it was interesting that Matt Crocker, he seemed to really prioritize that in his comments about what the priorities are for like Pochettino, and how we have a lot of players at club level that aren't playing, very often. So that's clearly something that's kind of bothered him. And I think that's what I'm most looking forward to seeing in the short term is, how he values certain players, in the player pool. So the first match is going to be October 12th. That means he'll probably have to name a roster somewhere around October 1st. So we're only about 3 weeks away from seeing the
Who
first,
knows
Pochettino.
who knows with how long this roster took?
Yeah, I know. I was like, man, they got to put that out pretty soon. But yeah, maybe it takes a little bit longer. But 3 weeks or so, he's going to have to name his first roster. And right then and there, I'm really curious to see how he values certain players. How much value does he give to players who are playing at great clubs, but they're not getting any minutes? A Matt Turner, Gio Reyna, folks like that. Does he value that, or does he leave them off? How much does he value a player who's like performing at a very high level in MLS? Like a Jordy Mihalovic or somebody like that, comes to mind. Does he put a lot of value on that? How does he value players like Brandon Vasquez and Cade Cowell who are playing well in Liga MX? Is that important to him? So it's how much is he bringing in players that don't have very many minutes? Is he bringing in players outside of Europe? I'm just really curious to see, what he values, from that first roster. And then I can't wait to see the team play at Mexico. So I know this first game against Panama is going to be exciting, but I don't think any of us are going to get too excited if we win that game. But going into Mexico and winning, I believe that's only happened one time, for the U.S. men's national team. So if he wants to do something really great, I know this isn't the best Mexico team they've ever had, but still going into Mexico and winning a game, any game, friendly or competitive or otherwise, would be a huge task. So I'm excited to see that too.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's no better way to start off as a U.S. manager than going into Mexico and winning.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean that would be an unbelievable start, to his time, as if he could go in there and get a W. Well, I know we're a little bit short on time here, Chuck, but I also wanted to ask about longer term. What are you hoping to see from Pochettino, or what are you excited to just see from this Pochettino era over the next 2 years?
Longer term, the goal is pretty clear. It's do whatever you need to do to get past the round of 16 at the World Cup here in the United States. And whether that means that he needs to already be on the phone with dual nationals trying to figure out who else he can bring in, or whether he feels like he has the guys that can actually do it. Like, even it does feel like he's genuinely excited about this role. And I mean, he has a lot of monetary reasons to be excited about this role, but it does seem like he's actually excited, bought in, and that'll go a long way into things hopefully working out well. But it really is just down to the players at this point. Like, we need to see them step up and show that they can actually understand the instructions that a coach like this is giving them and perform to the best of their abilities. Because if they do that, they press like Pochettino wants them to, they're going to beat most teams in the world. And then they're going to beat a few teams that we don't expect them to beat. But like right now, they're not even doing the thing that they used to do well under Berhalter of beat the teams that you're supposed to beat and then struggle against the teams that are better than you.
Yeah. Yeah, I did an episode a couple weeks ago with a reporter who covers Tottenham, and we talked about Pochettino's time there. I was trying to get a feel for what type of coach he was there, and one of the things he continuously told me was that he elevated Tottenham. They didn't win anything. They didn't win the league, they didn't win the cups, but he came in and took the level that they were at and made it a lot higher, and he made it a lot higher than a lot of fans or really anybody around the team ever expected them, to go, making it into a Champions League, final, contending for the Premier League title, that sort of thing. And so I want to see the same thing here. That's what I'm hoping for. I don't think he's probably going to win anything, with the U.S. men's national team or anything significant, other than like, Nations League, Gold Cup, something like that. But can he elevate us to another level of, football versus, where we've been? That's what I'm hoping to see, from him.
Yeah, because I mean, like right now, the goal isn't necessarily to go win the World Cup. Like we know that that's just, I don't want to say an unattainable goal, but like it's not necessarily a goal that we're in a position to worry about in 2026. But more success in 2026 will put us much closer to being able to think about winning it in 2030.
Yeah. Yeah. Getting to the quarterfinals or beyond, and or just beating one of those top teams, like beating a team like Argentina, Brazil, Netherlands, somebody like that in a knockout round at the World Cup, would be a huge step forward. Well, we got a lot to look forward to. And Chuck, thanks so much for being on the show. I'll make sure and put links in the show notes to your X account, which is at Chuck Booth Sport, and also to your work at CBS Sports. Thanks again for joining the show.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
And thanks to everyone for listening to Here and Abroad. If you enjoyed the episode, please do me a huge favor and hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube, or that follow button if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or somewhere else. Thank you so much. I'm Frank Garza. You can follow me on X at Frank Garza 007, and I'll be back next week with a new episode.